The brain and spinal cord comprise the central nervous system and operate in concert to provide the principal control of the body. The cerebrum is the largest portion of the brain. It is divided into two cerebral hemispheres by the longitudinal fissure. Each hemisphere is comprised of both white matter and gray matter. The gray matter, known as the cortex, is a layer that is comprised of neuronal cell bodies that serve as the center of higher forms of consciousness, thought, and control. The fiber tracts of the white matter serve as connective wiring between the cortex and other brain and body structures. The surface area of the cerebrum is increased by sulci and gyri. A sulcus is the furrow or valley in the surface of the brain. Those with greater depth are known as fissures. Gyri are ridges of nervous tissue that project outward from the surface of the cortex. Sulci help to separate the cerebrum into functionally distinct areas known as lobes, such as the frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital lobes. The cerebellum is the second largest distinct structure and sits in the posterior fossa. The cerebellum is responsible for coordination and stabilization of fine and complex movements, as well as a subconscious understanding of how the body is positioned in space. It connects to the brainstem via the cerebellar peduncles. The brainstem is the deepest and most protected structure in the brain. It is composed of the midbrain, pons, and medulla, and is home to the nuclei of the majority of the cranial nerves. The midbrain is where the cerebral peduncles that form the pyramidal motor tracts are found. The pons is essentially a relay station for information within the brainstem. The third component is the medulla oblongata. The medulla merges with the spinal cord at the base of the foramen magnum, a large hole in the bottom of the skull. The medulla is responsible for the maintenance of the most fundamental functions in the body, specifically regulation of the respiratory and cardiovascular systems. The spinal cord, whose proximal end is contiguous with the medulla oblongata, is also composed of white and gray matter. The central canal runs through the middle of this gray matter. There are two anatomic structures that serve to divide the spinal cord nearly into two lateral halves, the anterior median fissure and the posterior median sulcus. The lateral aspects of the cord give rise to the peripheral nervous system. A ventral spinal nerve root projects laterally from the anterior portion of the cord in either direction and merges with a dorsal root which projects from the posterior to form a spinal nerve. These then branch into the peripheral nervous system. The ventral root carries motor impulses from the cell bodies in the anterior horns of the gray matter to skeletal muscles. The dorsal root carries sensory information from the body's periphery to a specialized structure known as the dorsal root ganglion. These axons progressing into the spinal cord from these ganglia may then synapse either in the cord directly or run up the white matter to the brain. The dorsal horn of the gray matter contains interneurons, which are responsible for facilitating the relay of sensory input to other areas of the CNS. The white matter of the spinal cord is comprised of several tracts, which carry both sensory and motor impulses. Ascending tracts carry sensory information, such as sensations of pressure, light touch, and awareness of body position. Descending tracts carry motor information from the brain to the body. These tracts do not end when they enter the brain. Certain tracts will still synapse with different nuclei before they reach their final destination. This is to allow and control coordinated responses.